Hi, everybody. Hi, you quiet European people who choose to sit far apart from each other. I thought you were programmers. Programmers know how to run defrag. There's too much contiguous white space here. I can see too many of you. I want to make sure that you text your friends who are out in the expo hallway that don't know that we're having a session in here. And you have to make it sound like what we're doing is so amazing. Oh my God, it's so cool. I haven't done anything yet. Oh, you got to see Hanselman. He's out here. Da, da, da. Oh my God, the demo failed. Blue screen. Da, da, da. Just text whoever you know back in the expo center, and they'll come and check it out. That's my name, Scott Hanselman. I've learned here at a SharePoint conference that if you want to get a job, you have to put a lot of stuff at the end of your name. And so I put SharePoint at the back of my name, but nobody would look at my CV. I was getting no job offers. So then I changed it. And then all these job offers immediately start pouring in because of that capital P. So if you're having trouble finding a job right now, get that capital P in there, people. It's going to be a lot better. As I said, my name is Scott. I have a podcast that you should check out. It's called Hansel Minutes. My last name is Hanselman. If I was German, which I am, it would be Hanselmann with two N's, but one N we lost on the way over to America. And Hansel Minutes is the name of the show because I'm a very bad estimator. People would ask me how long this would take, and I would say, about 30 minutes. And they know it was a lie because it would take about 4 hours. So then it became a thing like, well, are those minutes or Hansel Minutes? So that became the name of the show. It's only 30 minutes long. It's a good quality show, and you should check it out. I've done over 700 episodes. I also did another one that was called This Developer's Life. That's storytelling that you should check out as well. Now, I have been programming for 30 years. I'm super old. I'm this old. I'm even older than this. I'm like this old. Like I learned programming from her. This is a TI 99A. My dad wanted me to be a doctor. But you can't be a doctor by Googling for stuff. But it turns out you can be a programmer for Googling for stuff. And it makes me happy when I get to do programming, right? Now, I do work at Microsoft. So I apologize. But I work remotely, as we heard in the introduction. So it's kind of on the forest moon, away from the Redmond reality distortion field. And I do work in open source, which is cool. It's kind of like a big Death Star with no Darth Vader, and we're just running around trying not to blow up another planet. Now, I work in open source, and I've been working in open source for many years. In fact, for years and years before I went to work at Microsoft, I was doing open source, and people said when I went to work at Microsoft that I was going to be a sellout. They were like, you're just in it for the money, man. You're working for Microsoft with a $sign for the soft. Bleh, Microsoft, P. And it hurt my feelings. I mean, it really did. It made me sad that they would call me a sellout. And it took a long time to really find a way to comfort myself with the feelings of pain and inadequacy that I was feeling. But I worked through that. I brought a couple of pictures. Here's a shot of me before Microsoft with my friends in IT. And then here's a shot of me after Microsoft. So it's worked out pretty well, I must say. It is a complicated company. Some of you may have seen the Microsoft org chart. It's quite sophisticated. Now, I was at Intel, and I was doing a talk on teaching web development. I was speaking to a programmer who was an older programmer, older somewhere between 90 and 120. And this is a really old programmer. Like, this is a picture of them taking a selfie. This is the level of generational stuff. Like, this is a person that knows how to use Emacs, right? And if you've ever used, you know why the Emacs system is so complicated. Have you ever seen the original Emacs keyboard? It's quite complex. That's why you need Emacs. So I was talking to this person in Intel, and this was an older developer, but this was a person that worked on microcode, low-level code inside of the processor. And they were asking me in 2019, hey, I want to be a web programmer. And I'm thinking to myself, this is amazing. Like, this is a person who's been programming for like 50 or 60 years, and they missed out on the internet part of it. Think about all the one-pixel transparent GIFs, all of the tables that they didn't write, CompuServe and dial-up, and you know, all the things that they didn't see because they were making processors work, right? How do you miss the internet? You know, it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. I was busy inventing the compiler. That's the level at which this person was talking. So I was really intimidated, thinking to myself, this person wants my help to be a web developer. But what an exciting opportunity to teach someone how to be a developer who missed out on all that yucky stuff. It's almost like they were frozen and then we unfroze them. They are really good computer people because they invented computers, but they now want to learn the internet. So how would we teach someone web development in this time? Because for me, I came up over 30 years from dial-up through putting the cloud together myself to the cloud. This person missed all of that. So I thought I would take them on a bit of a journey to talk about the cloud and the client and the server and explain some of the historical context that they missed. Now, there was a person named Thomas J. Watson. This was the head of IBM. And as with all of the quotes in this talk, most of these are made up or I can't prove that they exist. So I don't even know if this person was real or if this quote is a lie, but I do have this really old book. So I'm just going to make that the guy. I have no idea if that's the guy or not. Who knows? So we'll say that this guy said, there's a world market for maybe 5 computers. This is back when a computer took up a room, right? I've got a pocket supercomputer right here that I use to argue with people on the internet about politics and look at pictures of cats. But in the old days, you would go and have one that would fill a room. And they said that there's a market for maybe 5 of these. They thought that there'd be one per continent, right? There'd be like the North American computer, and there'd be the South American computer and the European computer, and I guess the British want their own computer, whatever, you know. And then you'd sell 5 or 6 of these things, and that would be the end of it. There'd be those computers, and then you'd say, well, we sold them all. That was them, all the refrigerators that we made. This is actually a picture of Azure. We are a little behind. We are getting color soon, which is good, and we're investing profoundly in containers. So you're going to see a lot of containers happening in the Azure Cloud. And this, well, actually, hang on. There we go. This guy's super excited about the great stuff that we're going to be doing in Azure. Now, when I talked to my friend at Intel, this older person, about the cloud, they said, well, isn't the cloud just what like hipsters call other people's computers? Because the cloud is just a computer that you can't see in a room somewhere. It's just hosting, right? A lot of us are old enough to remember that we've always had a cloud. Like, I got a cloud under my desk, right? I got a Linux server in my closet. I can call it the cloud. It doesn't make it cloudy. It's just a box. What is really interesting about the cloud, and where I think things became magical, was the introduction of the virtual machine. But let's back up and look at this diagram. So I'm explaining this to this person at Intel, and I said, well, here's the diagram that they teach us about computers in school. They say, well, there's this hardware and this abstracted away with the operating system, and there's a series of characteristics of that operating system that have to exist. In order for an operating system to be an operating system, it has to have memory management, storage, security, things like that, right? Networking. Those are all the things that you might want to have if you were going to be an operating system. And the person at Intel said, totally, I get it. I invented that, which was awkward, but I persisted. And I said, the cool part is when you lie to the computer. You lie to it and you put it into a virtual machine, and suddenly the computer doesn't know that it's being moved around from place to place. Now, this is at Intel, and a lot of us work for big, giant companies with big processes and complicated ways to get systems. I asked this person, how do you get a virtual machine? How do you provision one? And they said, well, you have to fill out a form, and then you fax it to your manager. and your manager signs it, and then they fax it to somebody else. And it's like, that's a very old way of thinking about stuff, because what is exciting about the cloud, what is the cloud, is the elasticity, the programmaticness of the cloud, the idea that I could call an API and get another VM like that. That's what's so fundamental about it. And a lot of us take that for granted. A lot of younger people take that for granted, and a lot of older people remember when we were the cloud. And you can do anything in the cloud. Like, for example, you can run Linux in Azure. You can go up and pick any Linux thing you want from the Azure Marketplace, and you can run a cool command line, and the command line has ASCII art, and it says cool right there, which means Microsoft's cool again. There was probably a meeting at Microsoft, and someone said, should we say welcome to the new Azure CLI? Of course, they didn't decide to tell us what CLI means, because we like our TLAs at Microsoft. But they did decide to put the word cool there, which I think makes it less cool somehow. And you can programmatically go and create a virtual machine. And creating that virtual machine programmatically without faxing anybody, just saying, I need a computer, and then bringing it up and then tearing it down again becomes really, really interesting. And the fundamental building block of any cloud is this idea of virtual machines on demand. And when you do that, if you look at the left side there, you can do anything. If you make a virtual machine, you can run any language you want. There's no judgment about what you decide to do. But you have to manage it, as you can see on the lower right there. You manage the operating system, you manage the apps. You have to keep it alive. It's like a puppy. You got to water it, or I don't have any pets, so I don't know what's involved in a puppy, but I understand that they're very complicated. And you have to remote desktop into it and run Windows Update. Once you've invented it, once you've created it, it's your job to keep it alive. And that's annoying. That's annoying because you might just want to make an application, like an expense reporting app, and put it in the cloud, and then suddenly you've got to go and SSH into a machine, or shush into the machine. I'm trying to make that a thing, by the way. I'd like you to go back to work later and just casually mention that. Next, do you SSH into computers? We're not going to do that anymore. We're going to shush into them. You just got to do it casually. Don't say why. Just do it in a meeting, and you're just like, yeah, we're going to go and shush into production. And if you can do a little zhuzh at the same time, that would be great. And then just see if it catches on, and if someone else at work just, I guess we're shushing into the machines now. See if you can get them to do it. And then we'll all start doing it. And then we'll have kids and grandkids, and they won't know how it started. It started right here today. We're going to shush all over the place. So you have to go and shush into the virtual machine and run apt-get upgrade and apt-get update, and you have to keep this thing alive. It's a lot like owning a car. All you want to do is go from point A to point B, but now you've got this car to worry about, and you've got to change the oil and keep the tires and this and that and the other thing. What you really want is like an Uber or a taxi that just does it for you. Those are the responsibility levels, and as you move up, you can maybe do less, but then Azure or the cloud is managing all of those updates for you, which is pretty exciting. So you get to decide how you want to do that. Another way to think about it would be like owning your first home or your own apartment versus renting apartment versus having a hotel room. And the nice thing about having a hotel room, like the one that they gave me for coming to speak to you, is it's platform as a service, which means I can totally trash my hotel room. I destroyed my hotel room last night because I'm a freaking rock star. And I'm going to go back, and it's going to be perfect. And they're going to put it back together. And then I don't know what I'm doing. It's just me and a Coke Zero. But at the end of the night, the whole place is torched. But if it were my own home, then I would have to be responsible for putting that back together again. Platform as a service lets you go and do those things and live at a higher level of abstraction. And that's really exciting. And there was a time when all I really knew about computers was running and then running as administrator. Now, the young people take for granted the idea that the cloud scales out. A lot of times I'll talk to a young person on my team and they'll be like, this scale is taking like a minute to get like 3 on the web farm. Blah. A minute. My boss used to tell me, can you scale the web farm on a Friday night and then go? Because that's what bosses do. And then I would have to go and buy computers and then rack them and then make the cloud. And then from the boss's perspective, he was like, can you scale from 2 to 5? And he was just pulling a slider bar. The slider bar was me. And then I would work all weekend and scale out the web. Now, I don't know how long your CV is, how long your resume is, but mine's 3 pages because I'm super old. Page 2 is scaling a web farm, 1995 to 2005. 10 years of specialization, of classes and certifications on how to scale a web farm effectively. And now it's a freaking slider bar. So now I have a 2-page resume. It just goes from page 1 to page 3. And then I go to the command line, and there's a single line that's trolling me. Updating a server farm. 10 years of my career destroyed. And the 22-year-old next to me is like, this is taking like a minute. Let's get a cappuccino and some toast. Avocados. But I'm not bitter. I just really am feeling sad about that slider bar. Now, I could be sad about that. I could be upset about that as an old person. But what's exciting about that is that 10 years of my career, of the research that we as a community did to learn how to scale stuff horizontally, is a slider bar. It's a solved problem. It wasn't really the problem that I was trying to solve in the first place. I was working for a company that was doing shopping carts. I don't really care about the slider bar at all. The business person would go and say, hey, can you make the site faster? And I would tell them what I would need to do, and they don't care. Just make it faster. Isn't it great? Isn't it exciting that we can just click a checkbox or software as a service and a slider bar, and the slider bar gets attached directly to our credit cards? I'm not sure if that part's great. And then things just get better. And that the young person that I work with at work just literally doesn't need to know about that stuff. That's pretty exciting. That in itself is what's fundamentally cool about the cloud, that I can programmatically communicate with my websites. I don't ever have to shush into anything. I don't have to remote desktop into stuff. I can just scale out, and it's just like, what just happened? It's magic. And the young people just get to have that magic. Have you seen the keyboards that the 20-year-olds are using? So much easier than the Emacs keyboard that I was using when I was growing up. So much better. I feel like I'm picking on the young people, but they can handle it. Now, my friend at Intel said, well, what language should I use to talk to the cloud? Like, do I have to write it in Node or JavaScript or C# or Java? And I was like, the cloud doesn't care. You do whatever makes you happy. You can make whatever language makes you happy. Whatever you know, the cloud supports that. It'll do .NET or Node or Java, and he couldn't believe it. I told him that, like, .NET, if you haven't heard, it's all open source. You can do anything. .NET runs on any platform, runs on microcontrollers, runs on Linux. All the Azure stuff, all the SDKs are entirely open source, allowing you to pick whatever makes you happy. So this person didn't have to just come in and pick a language or even a cloud. They could just do what makes them happy right off the bat. Now, I was at a conference recently. I think it was in, I want to say Norway somewhere. There was cobblestones on the ground. And there was a gentleman there who was working for Netflix at the time. Now, I don't have a picture of that person, but I have a picture of John Malkovich. And this is a famous American actor. And so then this gentleman was a British person. And I don't know if you know about this when you're an American and you meet a British person and they have a cool accent. They get like +2 charisma. Just like, oh, hello, I work on the cloud. I don't do a British accent. I don't do any accents. So I work on the cloud. Oh, British person, +2 charisma, you're very clever. The person was like a PhD of something, and they worked for Netflix, and they were doing a talk on how Netflix was scaling into Europe and how they moved from spinning Rust hard drives, you know, the hard drive that you can hear, If you have coworkers and you can hear their hard drive, don't trust them because something's going to crack, it's going to break. If you can feel your computer vibrate when you put your hands on it and you can like hear the click, 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 that's a problem. SSDs. They were moving from spinning rust to SSDs. And he explained the whole thing, and I thought he was going to get really technical. But instead, he didn't. He was talking about it at a higher level, because this is a CTO, like a chief architect type. And he was saying that there's a thing called IOPS, right? Input operations per second or input-output operations per second. It's a number that they'll tell you that you get guaranteed. It's another one of those things that gets attached to your credit card when you're doing the cloud. And it says, all right, we'll give you 100 IOPS. It's a measurement of throughput of a virtual machine. 100 IOPS for $1, or we'll give you 3,000 IOPS for $3. So 3 times more money, 10 times more, or 30 times more perf. And it was like, oh, this is very simple. We'll just move everyone over to SSDs. And he gave the whole talk, and it was amazing, and there were charts and graphs, and he was British, and he had a bow tie. And then a young person came up afterwards, and they were a Norwegian nerd. And I don't know how to speak Norwegian, but I can do nerd. And they were like, well, you know, actually, the SSDs in the meantime before a failure is in fact encrypted. And then, you know, and he basically said, you're an idiot, and SSDs fail a lot. And what happens if all the SSDs fail? Because, you know, SSDs tend to go bad, and when they go bad, they don't click; they just die. If you ever had an SSD stop, it's just, and that's it. That's the end of your computer. It's just like that. There's no warning. It just, psh, and your computer disappears. And then I thought that was kind of a good question, but also kind of there was some, I'm not sure how you say it in English, but some chutzpah, right? The kid had moxie. It was like, ooh, wow, you're going to ask a threatening question of a British person with a bow tie at a conference. You say, you suck. And the person just sat there like this, very, very, yes, and they said, well, that's not my problem. I'm renting them. Think about that. Did the kid have a valid technical concern? Probably. Yeah, SSDs are crazy. They break, absolutely. But what level is the CTO of Netflix operating at? Much higher level. This was a dollar thing. This was a perf thing. This was a cloud architecture thing. It cost this much more for this much more perf. Cool. Checkbox. Do it. Push the button. Slider bar. Whatever. And this kid was saying, there's all kinds of reasons that that's a problem. Is it my fault if the Uber stops moving? No, I'm going to get out. That Uber is in flames now, and I'm going to get another Uber. I feel bad that your car is in flames. It's not my problem, dude. It's not my car. Like, if your car is in flames, that would suck, right? My hotel room is in flames right now. Not my problem. I moved my stuff out. It's cool. It'll be put back, and there'll be a fresh hotel room. And they'll probably come and turn it down or turn down the bed or whatever. I don't know what that means, but they do that a lot. And this was amazing because this kid like didn't know that they'd been cut. It was kind of like those ninja movies where the ninja goes like shook and like cuts their head off and it slides down. And then the body is dead, but the body's like, should I fall over? The kid didn't know if he should fall over. I was like, do I push him over? I didn't know what the protocol was. Now, I don't have a picture of that, but I do have a picture of John Malkovich taking a grenade and hitting it with the back of a gun back to the guy who threw it. That's basically what it was like. You had to be there, but it was effectively that. Is that cool? Because, I mean, what did this kid think that we were doing? Are we going to go and like run Norton Disk Doctor on the cloud? Right? This sector is bad. I'm like, well, I'm renting that sector. I don't really care. There are people who continue to think that the cloud is at this level. It's not. You get these cool dashboards with maps and stuff on them. That's the cloud to me. If you want to make a startup and feel really fancy about yourself, if you ever have a startup, any startup people here, just get a television set. Okay, this is what you're going to do for me. Go get a TV, cheapest TV you can. You have to hang it in the lobby and then put a picture up there with pins of all of the places that you have a presence, because it's in the cloud, you're everywhere, right? Yeah. Right. I just put one everywhere there's a McDonald's that has Wi-Fi, and then I just tell people we have offices worldwide, right? You hang it in the lobby, so when they see the big picture of the Earth with all the pins, they're like, ooh, these people mean business. And then you make it scroll. Ooh, look at that. They got charts and graphs. I've seen some of y'all's dashboards. This is some pretty janky dashboards. I've also talked to some of you older people who think that this is a dashboard. That's a dashboard right there. All right, fine. I'm going to upgrade. I'm going to get the latest dashboard software. Boom, HTOP. That is not a dashboard. That is way more low level than you want to be. Well, it kind of makes me feel like I'm in the Matrix. No, this is not a dashboard. You can't, and here's the thing. This isn't an opinion. This isn't Scott having an opinion and you're like, tweeting mean things about me right now. He just picked on HTOP. There's just facts in the world that HTOP is not a dashboard. Another fact that's important to point out is that Luigi is the better Mario brother. Mario's trash. It has always been Luigi, just period. It's just the way it is. That has nothing to do with the cloud. I just want to make sure you're paying attention. So I'm explaining all of this to my friend at Intel and having them get a sense and an understanding about what the server means now. The server means you don't have to touch it. You don't visit it. You can't actually find your server with your stuff on it. True story. In the old days, you could visit your website. Not visit it with the browser. You could literally go and find it. You could go to the hosting company. You could put your hand on the computer. And if you had a laptop, you could push F5 to refresh. And you could feel the hard drive go. And then you could draw a direct line between pushing F5 and that spinning rust happening. But now people don't understand this stuff. The young people don't realize that they're not really working on the metal anymore. Sometimes you'll see someone push F12 in Chrome, and they're like, look, the source code of the internet. I pushed F12. It's a secret place. Don't tell anyone. But you're running in a virtual machine in a user mode process on top of a hypervisor, right? You think about the matrix and the many, many levels that there are. It gets even worse when you get into the browser. So I told my friend from Intel, let's move over and think about the browser. Remember this. Remember this. This is the diagram that describes the characteristics for something to be considered an operating system. If it has storage, it has memory management, if it has all these things, it's probably an operating system. Now, there was a time when you could sit down in front of a computer that looked like this and talk to another computer that looked like a refrigerator. And you would go and you'd log in and you'd get some text mode stuff and you get this app that would pop up. And you get this app that would pop up. And then it would show up on the screen there, right? It's okay, both of you that use Bing are excited about that. Where is the user interface here? Where is the user interface? It's the refrigerator that did the work. That terminal is called a dumb terminal for a reason. It just waited for the string to come from the fridge that did all the work. The mainframe did all the work. That's super important to think about. Now, when the web came along, Tim Berners-Lee invented the internet. This is actually a screenshot of the very first page on the internet. Literally, there used to be a computer at his office that was said, "This is the internet, do not turn off." It was under someone's desk. And that page is actually still there at the same URL. A lot of you keep changing the URLs of your websites, and you don't bother to do a redirect, but the original internet web page still exists, the same URL. I would let that shame you into making sure that you never, ever break a URL ever again. In fact, funny story, I was talking with someone in the office when I visited Microsoft in Seattle, and I was talking to this person. I didn't really know who they were just one of the devs or something. And I was talking about HTTP, and I was arguing a little bit about REST and REST APIs and HTTP and things like that. And then the person left, and then my buddy came over, and he just had this like pale as a sheet, and they were like, "Do you know who that was?" Just a pro tip, if anyone ever says, "Do you know who that was?" It's bad. It's bad for you. It's bad for the office. It's bad for basically everyone. So I was like, oh, no. Who was that? You were just arguing HTTP with that person. Yeah. They invented HTTP. They were Tim Berners-Lee's intern. So I went and I Googled with Bing for the HTTP specification, and I see the guy's name, Heinrich Frisk Nielsen, HTTP spec writer. Just a pro tip, you should always assume that whoever you're talking to invented HTTP. Because one day you will be talking with someone and be like, well, actually, and then you'll find out afterwards that you were wrong and they invented the thing that you were talking about. So that happened to me. I don't want that to happen to you. You got to be modest. Remember at the beginning of the talk when I added all those commas, MCP, MC, MVP, RD, I want you to just take a second. I've gotten a lot of your business cards and they have a lot of commas, maybe too many. Cisco, comma, this. Look at Tim Berners-Lee's title. You say you want to be a senior web developer. But the guy that made the web is just web developer, which makes us all juniors. Now, if he was trying to flex, if he was trying to be like feeling himself, he could have just put the. How badass would that be if someone handed you a business card and you're like, oh, the web? Yeah. The, either one. Yes, the web. But he's super chill about that. And he didn't know how big it was going to get when he did it, right? I mean, the internet got big. But if you think about that screenshot of the HTML and what was going on there, he was trying to make an infinite book. He wasn't really trying to make an application platform. He didn't think about it like that at all. So then other people tried to make it more like a book, like PDFs. And Adobe tried to turn the internet into something else. And PDFs are a big part of the internet right now, and they never would have expected that they wouldn't have gotten as big as they are. Would you have said in 2019 that PDF would become the 5th most popular religion? But the internet didn't do, the web didn't do what we wanted it to do. There were things we wanted from the internet. We wanted an application platform. We wanted virtual machines, like the ones we have on the server, except we've got these dumb terminals. The web ends up being a bunch of dumb terminals. We're just pushing text around, except now it has angle brackets. So the terminal that we had in the VT100 text mode terminal didn't look much different than the browser, except the browser had cooler fonts. So then this happened. And we all remember when this happened, because you're browsing the internet and you're doing your, and then Java loads. And then these guys were like, we can do it too, whee! And then these guys are like, hey, we're YouTube, you need us to watch videos, we have a reason to exist. And they're all dead. They're all gone. Why? Microsoft didn't kill Silverlight. The internet killed these things. Because what we were trying to do was this. We wanted this plug-in virtual machine. We wanted an application platform that looked with the same characteristics inside it. We wanted storage and memory management, security and networking and APIs. And then we would put it in a square on a page. And then we would run our apps. I went and took my Toyota car to the Toyota dealership recently, and I was talking to the person. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of a geek, and I want to see the system that they're doing. Like if I check in on an airplane, I'm like, oh, what is it? What's the hotkey for first class? And then the next thing you know, I'm sitting next to them. I want to know how are they doing that. And the folks at Toyota have a dumb terminal that they talk to with a back-end system. And I've known them for a while, and they know that I'm a dork and a geek, so I'll go and ask them technical questions. Then one day I showed up, and their computers were all new, fresh computers, new Dells. And I said, what's going on with the new system? And they said, oh, wow, let me tell you, it's fantastic. And he loads up Windows XP, and I was just like, oh, man. Like, do I tell him? And I was like, no, that's just fine. And he loads up Firefox, and he visits a web page on their intranet, and then Java says, we're going to run Java. Are you okay with that? And they were like, okay. And they're like, Java's known to be insecure. Are you cool with that? Type, I'm cool with that here in the thing, and then a thumbprint, and they prick your finger, and they take some blood. And then they launch a Java jar file and a client-side applet with a terminal emulator that talks to the same back-end system as before. And then he looked me in the eye, and he told me, this is way better than it was before. How many times have you done a modernization system like that? Let's put the web on it. It's going to be much better than the dumb terminal. And you ended up with an overpowered Core i9 that's sitting around and waiting for angle brackets to show up. We've all seen it before. Putting a virtual machine in a square didn't solve any problems. And the only places that you'll see those anymore are physics demos, where there's like a Java applet that shows you some old courseware from school. It's a bad idea. Additionally, Java didn't really work well. You don't just write once, run anywhere. You write once and you debug everywhere. So all the while Java's happening, I'm explaining to my friend from Intel, this is happening, JavaScript, which has nothing to do with Java. And your bosses still don't know that. They think that it's something like this. It's like JavaScript. It's like Java, and it's JavaScript-y. It's like better. Has nothing to do with it. It's actually called LiveScript, and then it was called ECMAScript because the Europeans want to run everything. And then it was ES6. It's just JavaScript, right? It's very complicated. It's very difficult. This is a flow chart of using JavaScript. The process that you go through when you want to use JavaScript. It's very painful. What? JavaScript. And I thought JavaScript was a toy. I didn't think you could do anything interesting on the client side. I remember the first time I saw JavaScript do something useful. You probably all had this experience when you're filling out a form online. You put in like your name or something or a phone number and you hit tab, and then the form field turns yellow. You go, what? I don't think it posted back to the server. And then you test it again and you fill it out, you hit tab, and you go, this is a self-validating client-side form. And I think that's amazing. Only old people like me remember that. They remember that moment? Like, what? It did not talk to the server. And I pick my laptop up and I go running. I go, look at this, it didn't go to the server. And I show my boss, and he's like, I don't care. And I ran and I show my partner, and she's like, I don't care. Like, this is amazing. We can do stuff with JavaScript. I used to just put in like alert boxes. Like, I thought JavaScript just popped up a message box. That's what it was for. But all the while, some 6-year-old in Denmark was doing something like writing a complete Commodore 64 emulator entirely in JavaScript just to see if they could. You know, it's some 6-year-old. It's always some Danish 6-year-old. God bless the Danes. So I'm starting to think to myself, well, wait a second. If you can make a form that validates and you can do something cool like that, like JavaScript as an emulator, like what else could you potentially emulate? What kind of crazy or interesting stuff could you do? Maybe you could come over here and look at your notes and then go and push this button and then push this button and see that your computer fell asleep, and that's okay because you can go and say like that, and your computer wakes up. And then you can do this. Da, 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 da. This is a complete Linux virtual machine running entirely in JavaScript. So then I can go in here and I can go and run TCC and run a C compiler in a JavaScript virtual machine in a browser on Windows, just so I can go and say, hello world. Because it's awesome, right? Why not? Why would I not want to do that? So then it's like, well, how far could we take this? What other stupid things could we do with JavaScript? Could we make an Electron application that is a perfect implementation of Windows 95 written in JavaScript. And then play Minesweeper. But that's not that cool, because if I can't go and do a complete virtualization of Windows 3.1 inside of WebVR, in a WebVR of my parents' basement, and then run Trumpet Windsock and Netscape Navigator 2.2. Then maybe your boss who's thinking, I don't know if JavaScript's really ready for prime time. Do you think we can do that? Okay, we'll log into the internet later. So I figure if you can do that in JavaScript, you can do other stuff, but you can't disable it because you'll die. But at the same time, JavaScript causes a lot of deaths. This is a chart that shows you all of the planets in the solar system. You can see the number of deaths on Earth. None of the other planets have JavaScript. I'm just saying there could be correlation there. I'm just saying we need to look at the numbers. That's all I'm saying. So you can actually go and take C and C++ now and compile it into JavaScript. I told this to my friend at Intel, and they couldn't believe that. They thought that was amazing, because they were used to compiling it into machine code. But this is compiling it like into WebAssembly, which is an assembly language for the internet. And at this point, people usually think that I'm going to show a video game like Quake or Doom running in the browser. No, I'm not going to do that. It's too cheap. I don't do cheap demos. But I will do a really stupid demo in a second, so buckle up. Here is the original chart that describes the characteristics of what we think of as an operating system with the characteristics of JavaScript overlaid. JavaScript has garbage collection, and JavaScript has graphics subsystems and storage. It has APIs for networking and events and threading. I propose that JavaScript is an operating system. It's an extra one that comes along for the ride when you get your browser. Now, if JavaScript is an operating system, it's possible that there are other hidden operating systems that we don't know about on our computer. Atwood's law says that any application that can be written in JavaScript will be written in JavaScript eventually. And there was a very famous music video in America where Kelly Rowland, one of the Destiny's Child people, texted Nelly from Microsoft Excel on her Nokia. I don't understand why the director didn't at some point let them know that that was not in fact texting, that was Microsoft Excel. But it's still an iconic moment in American music history. Your phone has an operating system, but you know, if you're doing something in Excel, how far could you take it? If Excel might itself be an operating system, what if we switch back over here could we do this in Excel? Office 365. This is a complete emulator of Pac-Man written in Excel. It's so awesome that it makes Excel not respond for minutes at a time. Each individual cell is a pixel. It's so incredibly powerful, it cannot be stopped. In fact, you should have seen my Halloween costume this year. I went as Microsoft Outlook, and I just came with a shower curtain in front of me that kind of made me like kind of opaque with just not responding at the top. And I would just walk around and refuse to speak at anyone at the party. I'm going to go ahead and blow that one away because it isn't really an operating system until you do something really stupid. Like make an implementation of Doom in 3D with ray tracing. I'm actually moving around here. There's a portal over there. Let me go back to the side. This is the HD version of Doom. Each pixel is a cell. That's where we are. So that's a hidden operating system that you have on your machine that you didn't know about as well. Now, some people didn't think that HTML was a good idea. They're like, well, you know, JavaScript, HTML, they usually use that word HTML5, right? HTML5 is coded language for JavaScript and CSS and HTML. And if you'll recall, originally the Facebook app was not a native app. It was written in HTML, and Mark Zuckerberg said that he didn't think HTML5 was ready yet. And I think it was. There's a really great quote that says it's too late for the pebbles to vote. The avalanche has already begun. Do you know who said that wonderful quote? It's Ambassador Kosh from Babylon 5. Some kind of giant alien guy. But the avalanche has already begun. Like, JavaScript is happening. You need to know it. We've seen that with TypeScript and JavaScript and how the interactions work with web componentry inside of SharePoint. And when we say HTML5, it doesn't really mean HTML. It means JavaScript, it means CSS, it means HTML, and they all work together. But sometimes it can be hard to spot these things in the wild. How do you tell HTML from HTML5? Here's a handy tip for you. You try it out in Internet Explorer, and if it didn't work, it's HTML5. That's how you know. It's pretty complicated to be a web developer these days. There's a lot of stuff you have to learn to be a web designer. It's a very difficult time. Now, when I was younger, though, there was a time when HTML tables were the most advanced technology on the planet. Right now it's AI and ML and all that kind of stuff. But when I was coming up, if you knew how to make a table, you could write your own ticket. You're at an interview, you say, do you know how to do a table? Yeah. Boom, you're hired. Do you know how to do row span? Senior engineer. It's true. But now I keep going to web pages and I go view source and there's just a single div. The whole application is JavaScript. It's crazy. I don't know how to deal with that. There's one div. HTML is just the structure. And now people are doing all kinds of amazing things in CSS. It's the color and the style. Now I've got giveaways for everyone. Everybody here gets one of these great mugs that I made about CSS and how amazing CSS is. Now, I need to fix some of the bugs before I can give you the mug. But I did speak to some great people that were very experienced at doing these kind of things in SharePoint and making CSS and fluid design or whatever it's called. And it looks way better. But I'm still don't have it quite the way I want it, Because CSS is very intuitive. We all know what CSS is like. It's very expressive. You get exactly what you want every time. And I mean, all of us need to learn it. It's just such an essential part of a programmer's lifestyle right now. I hope that you learn CSS as much as I've enjoyed it. And then you just learn JavaScript for everything else. I've actually got some home video of me learning JavaScript for the first time. JavaScript's a great language, right? JavaScript, in Ruby, everything's an object. In Clojure, everything is a list. And in JavaScript, everything is a terrible mistake. And the great part about JavaScript is that you don't even have to learn the bad parts. Don't you just love debugging your JavaScript? Just stepping through it. Just step, F10, 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 just very, very enjoyable. There's a really great book that you can get from John Resig, who wrote jQuery. He's the author of jQuery. It's called Secrets of a JavaScript Ninja. It's a fantastic book. I did make a comment, though. I said, hey, John Resig, That is a samurai. Why is there a samurai on the cover of Secrets of JavaScript Ninja? And he said, well, it's very simple. That's because JavaScript is loosely typed. It's duck typing. I apologize for that joke. Now, someone once said that JavaScript is the assembly language of the web, one of our great philosopher kings. Me. But everyone else said it also because it's one of those things that's true, right? Of course, JavaScript is the assembly language of the web. It's the new low-level thing. But when I said it, everyone on Reddit said, you're full of crap, and they all came at me, and it was a big controversy, and it went viral, and Slashdot, and all that kind of stuff. So then I went out, and I found the people who invented JavaScript, and I asked them if they thought JavaScript was the assembly language of the web. So I went, and I found Brendan Eich, who invented JavaScript. And I said, hey, Brendan, that is actually Brendan Fraser from The Mummy. That is Brendan Eich. But you know, Brendan Fraser is a beautiful man, so let's just, we'll keep him up there. JavaScript is the x86 of the web, but I can't claim it's original. As with all really good quotes, people come up with these things at the same time, right? But in fact, WebAssembly is a thing, right? WebAssembly is happening. And everyone's working on it, and it's here now, and it's running in your browser. You've got WebAssembly probably in your pocket supercomputer, which is amazing. Everybody wants that. It's just one example of transpiling or compiling to another language. Like, here's an example where the Ruby people made CoffeeScript, which is what a Rubyist wishes JavaScript was like. And TypeScript is an example of what a C# person wishes that JavaScript was like. And those opportunities to abstract away the complexities and the nuance and the weirdness of WebAssembly and of JavaScript can be really, really powerful. In fact, you can do some other interesting stuff right now, like this. This is C code. That's just straight hello world in C. And you can compile it to the text format of WebAssembly and then output it right there, which isn't that interesting. But what if you wrote some straight C code to go and manage a vector and do a Fibonacci sequence, build it, run it, and now I can do really, really interesting stuff. In fact, what if I wrote an entire web application entirely in C# and compiled .NET itself into JavaScript and WebAssembly? This application is a spa that lets you order pizza, and all the controls and everything here is all native web, except this is entirely written in C#. That's Blazor. There's no JavaScript that anyone has to learn in any of this, but that's the entire thing for the view source. And the C# programmer just writes C#, which is pretty amazing. In fact, you're going to see more and more AAA games coming where people will be able to go and take Unity applications and C# apps and deliver them to the browser entirely in WebAssembly. Now here's the thing though, you don't want to let layers hide too much complexity, because I'm showing you a lot of layers. I'm showing my friend from Intel a lot of layers. You got to remember where the metal is so you understand the stack. You don't need to be an expert at the entire stack, but you at least need to know what's going on in case your Uber ever bursts into flames. You have a general familiarity with how cars work and which part is the dangerous part. Because people get an idea that they're going to be slick and they're fancy, and then they're not. That could be someone using jQuery. You don't know. I saw someone say this in an interview recently. No one writes JavaScript anymore. They write jQuery. You know who said that? jQuery. I actually looked up jQuery, and I found jQuery. and I was looking at jQuery here at the on Wikipedia, and it actually is about an actor named jQuery, and it actually says on Wikipedia for the JavaScript library, see jQuery. So I've decided that jQuery said that. That's the actor. This is his IMDb page. He's been on a couple of TV shows, Fred the Show and Fred 2, Night of the Living Fred. I have not seen that. If you rely on these libraries and you don't understand what's happening at the lower level, you get this image in your mind about this thing that you're going to build, and you think it's going to be amazing, and then you build it and it's not amazing. And you don't know who to blame, but you have to blame somebody. Too soon? Too soon, too soon, that's fine. Consider using Vanilla.js. You'd be surprised how many small businesses and startups say, we're going to start a new company. It's going to be amazing. We'll get all our buddies together. We're going to make this great company. And there's all these great JavaScript frameworks to pull from. But before we do the new thing at our new company, let's write our own JavaScript framework from scratch. We have all these great component libraries to use. We don't have to think about these things. We can sit on the shoulders of giants. Just like when I ripped out page 2 of my resume. I could have been sad about it. I could have been salty about it. But now I'm excited that I can focus on the business value that I want to do. And that's what's great about things like SharePoint is they don't have you thinking about any of that stuff. You just think about the business value that you're going to create. So I want you to think about these things as you expect more from your web tools, which is what I told my friend from Intel, is that this is a perfect time to be a web developer because everything is starting to work together really nicely. Right now, after 30 years, we finally got it kind of tuned in pretty well. You've got massive scale and elasticity. You've got your choice of languages on the server side, totally programmatic cloud. And then on the browser, people don't realize that our pocket supercomputers are hardware accelerated, quad processor right here. There's a complete integrated virtual machine. Are you sorting your lists on the server side? Pretty sure that the new Apple iPhone 11 can sort lists of up to 10 items. You might think about, are you using your client's machine as a dumb terminal, or can you put it to work? Now you've got unlimited virtual machines on the server, but you have to plug your credit card into that. Don't forget that your user has a powerful virtual machine. So if you have 1,000 people hitting one server, you actually have 1,001 virtual machines that you could take advantage of, and then you could write JavaScript and target more of the work that's happening on the client side. That user's virtual machine is part of the cloud, so why not put it to work? And your cloud doesn't need to work so hard. So I told my friend at Intel, and I will tell you, my friends, here today at this wonderful conference, you are powerful. There's a great new operating system that's shipping every day. Just hit F5 to reboot. You know the cloud. You can program to the browser. Get to work. Thank you, friends.